After a wild week of weather, we are waiting and watching for the next weather system to impact the United States. But first, we will enjoy above normal temperatures for this upcoming weekend. We have all the details next at the Weather Farm. Welcome to our Friday. We have made it to the end of yet another work week, and we have a forecast ready for you. As we start on our Friday, we see an area of low pressure across the Central Plains. It is bringing snow through Wyoming to Nebraska, spreading into Iowa. That's going to continue to move off to the east during our Friday. Out across Southern California into Arizona, we see another area of low pressure bringing rain to the desert Southwest. Hopefully those areas that haven't seen hardly any rain over the last year, hopefully you do see some rain from this system. In those higher elevations, we are going to see snowfall places like Flagstaff. As we go to the northwest into British Columbia, we see the beginnings of an atmospheric river making its way on shore. That's going to bring heavy rain and snowfall to that region and continue throughout our Saturday. And it's going to spread down into Washington and Oregon. But out east into parts of Maine, into Quebec, we see that low pressure system, the same storm system that brought the severe weather to the south and the gusty winds behind it for our Thursday. That is still bringing strong winds to the northeast and heavy snowfall to places like Maine for our Friday, as that low pressure system deepens from a 970 millibar low on our Friday morning. So let's take a look at that system, and we see it continuing to move off to the north. And it's a little bit off the map here, but that pressure system is deepening to a 964 millibar low by the time we get to midnight on Friday. And it's going to bring heavy snow to places like Maine, into Quebec, into Nova Scotia by the time we get to Saturday morning. That system that is moving across the Central Plains into the Ohio Valley, as it moves on its Friday, it is going to weaken as it runs into some drier air in the wake of that storm system. But across the southwest, we see the snow moving through Arizona into New Mexico, and in the Pacific Northwest, we see more rain and snow impacting that area. In terms of snowfall, we are going to see a widespread swath of 4 to 7 inches from southeast Wyoming through northern Nebraska into far western Iowa. As we get through Iowa, more central Iowa, we will see about 3 to 5 inches. As we get towards northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, into northern Indiana, and southern Michigan, widespread 1 to 2 inch snowfall amounts are likely throughout Indiana. In the northeast, and specifically at the state of Maine, we're going to see in the far northern reaches of that state widespread 8 to 15 inches. Places like Holton, Maine, the terminus of I-95, you could see up to a foot of snow as this system continues to depart. Down through New York into Pennsylvania, in those favorable lake effect snow regions, we could see 1 to 3 inches of additional snowfall because of the wraparound winds with this system. And if we look in the desert southwest in that Four Corners region, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah, we're going to see widespread 1/4 to 1 inch to 1/2 inch rainfall amounts. As we get in those higher elevations, that is going to be in the form of snow, which could accumulate up to a foot of snow. And if we look across Southern California, we're going to see places like Los Angeles down to San Diego, 1/2 inch of rain could be possible during the day on our Friday. And we're going to see the warmth surging from the south with our temperatures on our Friday. 60s are going to be as far north as central Missouri through southern Kansas into Oklahoma. But where we see that snowfall making its way across from Wyoming through northern Nebraska into Iowa, temperatures are going to be held down into the 20s and 30s. Same thing in the New England, where we have those northwesterly winds and that snowfall. Temperatures are going to be held down in the 20s. But in far southern Texas, we could see temperatures approaching the low to mid 90s. And if we go down and further into Mexico, we could see temperatures approaching the century mark for our Friday. Out towards Florida, you're looking at temperatures generally in the 70s and 80s as people make their way down for the beginning of spring break. As we look at Saturday morning, we're going to see that system that brought the snow to the Central Plains. It's completely dissolved by the time it gets to West Virginia, but we see a new system forming in Texas with rain across northeastern Texas. But on the backside, where we see that trough dipping across the western states, we could see some snowfall with this particular system into northern New Mexico, into the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma. We see a couple clipper systems making their way across the Canadian prairies. One is through central Alberta, and the other one's diving down through southeastern Manitoba into Minnesota, bringing light amount of snow. But again, out west in British Columbia, it is the atmospheric rivers bringing heavy amounts of snow and rain to that area. In fact, let's put everything into motion. We watched that snow flying across New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas for our Saturday as rain moves through Arkansas, Louisiana, and the southeast by the time we get to Sunday. This could bring some heavy flooding rains to that part of the country by the time we get to our Sunday morning. We watch those clipper systems moving across the Canadian prairies, generally bringing light amounts of snow. But again, in the northwest, we're watching that atmospheric river. Temperatures on our Saturday will be held down a little bit as that trough continues to make its way through out of the Four Corners region across the southern central plains into the Tennessee Valley. But these temperatures aren't that different from seasonal temperatures for this time of the year. It's more normal. Again, we're going to look in far southern Texas, low to mid 90s. In the northeast, teens and 20s are going to be likely. But if we look out west into Montana, into the Dakotas, even into Alberta, we are going to see temperatures surging into the mid to 50s for our Saturday. In terms of snowfall with that particular system, as it moves out of New Mexico into the panhandle of Oklahoma, we could see anywhere from 1 to 4 inches of snow, maybe an isolated 5 or 6 inch amount of snow. And as we watch that system continue to move through the southeast for our Sunday, we are going to see rainfall amounts generally along south central Mississippi into Alabama, but Georgia, southern Georgia, and South Carolina, you are going to be in the bullseye with 1 to 2, possibly 3 inches of rain. Elsewhere, generally up to an inch of rain is likely. In our Sunday temperatures, where it is raining in the southeast, temperatures are going to be held down as a result, where we could see just 40s and 50s as far south as northern Louisiana into the Carolinas. The real warmth in Florida is going to be from Orlando and Tampa all the way down to Miami with temperatures in the 80s. Through the Central Plains, though, where we saw that snowfall for our Friday, we see temperatures surging into the mid 60s as far north as South Dakota. And across the desert southwest, we see temperatures again rebounding after that rain and snow has moved out. Temperatures nearing 80 degrees for places like Phoenix for our Sunday. And as we get to Monday morning, that low pressure system is making its way off the coast of South Carolina, taking with it that heavy amount of rain. We see another clipper system making its way through Saskatchewan, through to Manitoba and Alberta. It's bringing light amount of snow. And the same thing goes for Tuesday. We do see that clipper system making its way into Ontario with snow, but most of the big snow is going to stay north of the Canadian border for most of early next week. Temperatures are going to be mild as we see those red 500 millibar contour height lines. They're surging north. We're going to have a lot of warmth from places from the Rockies through the Central Plains to the Ohio and Tennessee valleys. But all is about to change. This was the forecast anomaly map of the 500 millibar level for weeks 1 through 4 as it was issued on February the 17th. We're going to look at this right panel because the top image is where we are now. The eastern half of the United States is a little bit cooler than normal. We saw that big system make its way through on our Tuesday, bringing snow to the northern Great Lakes region into Ontario. We see that with that dark blue. But looking at the bottom image, this is what we were forecasting for next week back in the middle of February. Warm air surging across the southern parts of the United States into the Ohio Valley, into the Northeast, and the West was going to be colder than normal with troughiness present in that thing. And that's what we're going to see over the next week. So if we put our 500 millibar map into motion, by the time we get to the middle of next week, we have that warmth in the east. We see a little disturbance making its way across the south. Nothing too terrible, but it's the next system by Thursday and Friday that makes sure that's going to be the very powerful one, and one that we're beginning to get some confidence that there could be a major system somewhere from the Rockies to the Central Plains up to the northern Great Lakes by the time we get to the next weekend. So about 7 to 8 days. A lot to be determined. A lot can change with this forecast, but we are the verification of that CDOS model that we saw a few weeks ago come into play, and we see this trough being the next major system to impact the United States. And it's one of the reasons why the NOAA has gone ahead and upgraded their risk of heavy snow. If you watched our video on Wednesday, you saw that this was a much wider area, but we're now seeing that risk of heavy snow, a moderate risk, somewhere around the 14th to 15th, being concentrated across the Dakotas, through Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, into the UP of Michigan. Outside of that, there is a slight risk, but we also still see the moderate and slight risk in the Cascades and the Sierras out west for that same time period. We are seeing those signs as we look at all the synoptic levels of the atmosphere of something happening that is of significance by the time we get to next Thursday, Friday, into Saturday of next week. We will keep you informed here of the latest changes. We hope you had a great day. We hope you have a great weekend coming up. Check back with us throughout our weekend. We are posting a little bit more often with some special recap videos that are shorter in length. Check those out. Share them with your friends. We hope to see you again next time at the Weather Farm.